Hello. Today we're going to be looking at a summary of lessons 3.1 through 3.4, focusing on the basic operations using fractions. So we will be simplifying, converting, and adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. So let's begin in example 1 by simplifying. The main thing that you're doing, and this is probably review, when simplifying a fraction is looking for a common number that goes into both the numerator and the denominator. So as soon as you see 4 and 64, you know they're both even numbers, so at the very least they're divisible by 2. But you can look for something larger as well. In this case, the largest possible number is going to be 4 itself. 4 does go into 64 equally. It goes in 16 times. So if we divide our numerator by 4 and our denominator by 4, we will get 1/16, and that is fully simplified. In the second one, we have a negative fraction. That doesn't change anything. We simplify still in the same fashion. So we end up with -17/30ths. They both have this no common denominator. No common factors. We can see 17 is a prime number. There's nothing else that goes into it. There are other numbers that go into 30, but 17 is not one of them. So then, if that's the case, you could either rewrite the fraction, -17/30ths, or you could simply write already simplified. In example 2, we're going to be converting from a mixed number to an improper fraction. In order to do this, we're going to multiply the denominator by the whole number portion of the mixed number and then add the numerator on, and then we keep the denominator the same. So in this case, we would have 4 times 8, which is 32, plus 3. So we multiply here, add here. So 4 times 8 is 32, plus 3 is 35, and then we keep our denominator, and so our improper fraction would be 35/4, and that is equivalent to 8 3/4. Next, we have a negative mixed number. Now, the important thing to remember here is that our answer will be negative, but you don't need to worry about the negative during the process. So you actually almost just ignore the negative for right now. Multiply your denominator 8 by 1, and you'll get 8. Add 3 on to get 11. And so because we keep our denominator, it would be -11/8. So the whole improper fraction is also negative, but we didn't need to worry about the negative when we did our multiplication. In the next step, we're going to be adding and subtracting fractions. This is when our denominators are the same. So this is fairly straightforward. If you have two fractions with a common denominator, you only need to add or subtract the numerators. So in this case, we're evaluating an expression when m is 2/10, so we're going to substitute that in. So our expression would become 7/10 plus 2/10. Because we have a common denominator, that's going to stay 10. And in the numerator, we just add 7 and 2 straight across and get an answer of 9/10. If our answer was left unsimplified at this point, we should go and simplify, but we can see that it is fully simplified, so that is our final answer, 9/10. In the next problem, we have, again, common denominators, but we have 5/7 plus -4/7. So we're adding a positive to a negative. So an important thing to remember here is what we're actually doing is subtracting. So we will subtract straight across. So the problem is almost just like 5 minus 4 all over 7. So it ends up being 1/7. Okay, down in example 4, we have multiplying fractions. When multiplying fractions, common misconception is that you need common denominators. You do not. You do not need common denominators, which makes it actually probably easier than adding and subtracting fractions in some ways. Now, one thing we do want to take care of, however, when we first look at A, we see we do have a mixed number. it will serve us well if we change that, convert it into an improper fraction first. You want to get in the habit of doing that anyways. So we will take our denominator 11, multiply it by 2 to get 22, and add 1 to get 23/11. Then we will multiply that by 1/3. So now we have our two fractions ready to be multiplied. Again, we don't have to change much, so we can just simply multiply straight across. So we will multiply 23 by 1 and 11 by 3. So our numerator will now be 23. Our denominator will now be 33. And 23 is a prime number that does not go into 33, so we are fully simplified. In letter B, we just have two standard fractions ready to be multiplied straight across. So in the numerators, 1 times 7 will give us 7. In the denominators, 6 times 8 is 48. And so we have a final answer of 7/48 that cannot be simplified. Lastly, for today, we're going to look at dividing fractions. When we're dividing fractions, there is a memory device that you probably learned last year. Some variations of it, but either keep, switch, flip, or keep, change, flip. Either way, what you remember to do is to keep the first fraction exactly as it is, switch the division sign to multiplication, and flip the second fraction. So we would have 4/9 times 3/1. And so once we change this into a multiplication problem, we can easily multiply across. So 4 times 3 is 12. 9 times 1 is 9. Now, a few things to note about this. First of all, this fraction can be simplified. They do have a common factor between them, and it's 3. So let's take a moment to divide by 3 in the numerator and the denominator, and we'll end up getting 4/3. Now the next thing to note is it's an improper fraction, and we might have the instinct that we want to change it into a mixed number, and you certainly may. You can switch it back just simply by dividing 4 by 3. So you get 1 with a remainder of 1, so it would be 1 1/3. But I'm perfectly okay with you just leaving this as an improper fraction at this point as long as it is simplified. The only exception to that is if it's a word problem and it wouldn't make sense to leave it in improper fraction form. Then you want to change it into a mixed number. Our last one, letter B, we have 1 5/8 divided by 3. Now again, we want to change that mixed number into an improper fraction before we begin, just like we did up in example 3 multiplication. So let's multiply 8 by 1 to get 8 and add 5 on. That will give us 13/8 divided by 3. Now, some of you might be looking at this and saying, well, what do I do because 3 is not a fraction? Well, remember, any rational number can be written as a fraction, so we could take this whole number and just write it as a fraction over 1. So now we'll follow the process of keep, switch, flip. We can just simply keep 13/8, change division to multiplication, and flip our second fraction, so it will become 1/3. And then we multiply straight across. 13 times 1 is 13. 8 times 3 is 24. And that fraction is fully simplified. So that is our final answer.